as well. There is I prime, and so, ladies and gentlemen, here is that triangle. Remember, should be the exact same shape. If you notice, the letters do switch off a little bit. It was H-I-J, now it's I-H-J. And so there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, reflection is just a lot of counting. That's all you have to be careful with. So now this one says it's a reflection across the x-axis. So the x-axis is the mirror. Now remember, this is the one that kind of throws people off sometimes. Maybe not the S so much. Like the S, I count to the mirror, and then I count away from the mirror. So there's the brand new S prime. These are the ones that tend to throw people off. This is the original Q, so people think, well, I have to count down just like I did here. No, we count towards the mirror. So this one's actually going up. Well, then we go up. And I believe that's a Q. So Q prime is right there. Now it's going to get a little bit messy here with the R, so I'm just going to do it like this. So 1, 2, 3 down to get to the mirror. So 1, 2, 3 down to get to the other side of the mirror to find my R prime. And there you go. This is the kind where they overlap, and the only reason it overlapped is because the axis here of reflection, right, the line of symmetry, was going through the shape. That happens. All right, but now officially getting started here with the notes. Rotation. Rotation is the last transformation that we're going to be doing in class. And one of the things you need to know about rotation, here's how we're going to keep it simple. The shape doesn't change, and size doesn't change. Now remember, we've said that before. For the translation, we said the same thing. Reflection, same idea. The shape doesn't change. The size doesn't change. All we have to do is remember that when we're doing a rotation, we're going to spin. So that's the key word, right? That's the basic way of saying it. When we have a rotation, we're going to be spinning it around. So look, here we have an idea. Here's the letter F. Now the letter F, notice, is in quadrant number 1. And then we're going to spin it around. Now we're going to spin it around this very special point here. In this case, it's going to be the origin. That's what we call the center of rotation. It's the point. It's the point the object is rotated about. So that's why this one we would say, oh, this is a rotation about the origin. Now rotation does need a little bit more. Notice how it went from quadrant 1 into quadrant number 4. And remember, if in case you forgot, this is actually quadrant 2. This one is quadrant number 3. And so the idea is when you jump from one quadrant to the next, that just means you've traveled 90 degrees to get to the other quadrant there. And so that's what happened. In this case, F was rotated about the origin 90 degrees. Okay. Now, there is another thing that comes up with rotation, and that is, well, what if I spin it this way, right? Like a regular clock, or I could spin it backwards. That's called counterclockwise. And so direction becomes very important with rotation. And so that's the topic here. When you have direction, if you're going clockwise, then you're following the clock, right, in that order. Or it could be counterclockwise. And that just means we're going against the clock. We're going in the opposite direction this time around. So direction, again, becomes very important. But like I said, this whole concept of, well, do I spin it just into the next quadrant? Maybe I could go 2 quadrants. Maybe they'll make me go 3 quadrants. Well, that's what this one is talking about. If I want to do a full rotation, meaning a full spin, a full circle, a full circle would be 360 degrees. So if you ever get a rotation and they say, do a rotation of 360 degrees, well, guess what? You're already done with the problem. Because if you're here at this point and you do 360, well, guess what? You're back where you started. So you don't get a lot of those because it means you're not going to do anything. But the idea is every 90 degree rotation, you're basically moving one quadrant over. So again, that's what I was telling you. If you're in quadrant 1 and they say, hey, go 90 degrees clockwise. Clockwise means you're moving with the clock. You're going to end up in quadrant number 4. But if I was in quadrant 1 and they said, hey, move 90 degrees counterclockwise, then I would end up in quadrant number 2. And so it just depends. But the idea is every 90 degrees, look at that. Remember, this is a 90 right here, right? There's a 90 degree there. Every time you move 90, that basically means you're moving into the next quadrant. Hey, I'm going to move my 90. I move to the next quadrant. Another 90, then I move to the next quadrant. And what you notice is, look at the lettering. This is what we're going to use. This is the most important part that you're going to need from your notes to do the assignment and to help you with the your first test coming up this week. The order switches. Every time I move 90, look, it said AB, now it's BA. I move 90, look, it switches back to AB. I move 90, and then it moves back to BA. So that's one thing to look at. And just note that depending on the quadrant, remember, anything in quadrant 4, this is always positive, this is always negative. Same thing here. In quadrant number 3, both numbers are negative. So you do have to remember some of your algebra basics there for this. And of course, I was going to mention, if you go 180 degrees, well, then that just means you're going 2 90s. So if I'm in quadrant, let's say 2, and they say go 180 counterclockwise. Well, look, 90, 180. That just means you're going 2 quadrants. So you have to break it down by 90s. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, so here we go. Look at this point K, right? It says graph the rotation and list the coordinates of the image. All right, so regular K has the coordinates. Let's see, that's -2 and 1, 2, 3, -3. So -2, -3. So now the question is, well, what's going to be the brand new one? All right, well, look. This is where we're going to get a lot of help here. Notice how it's in quadrant number 3. And I'm going to go 90 clockwise. So I'm going to spin it like around as if I'm going with a clock. So as I do this, I realize, hey, that means K is going to be spun. And look what quadrant I'm going to end up with. I'm going to end up in quadrant number 2 if I'm only going 90. So then look, every time we go 90, we said all we have to do is switch the numbers. So now it's 3 and 2. Don't worry about the negatives yet. Right now it's just switching the values, right? So we're switching the numbers. So now it's 3 and 2. But because I'm in quadrant 2, look at the note here. In quadrant 2, the first number, the x value is always negative. The y value is positive. Boom, done. This k prime is now going to be at -3 and +2. There it is. So there's a lot of things you have to be careful with. You have to look at, right? You have to say, all right, how much am I traveling? 90. Okay, I'm going to move in this quadrant. And then because I'm in quadrant number 2, what does that tell me about my numbers? That's what we're looking at. All right, look at number 2 now. Looking at number 2, here's the point, V. So V has the coordinates. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's 3, 4. Notice how I'm in quadrant number 1. Now notice how they said go 180 degrees counterclockwise. So against the clock would be going like this, right? Just like the picture. So like this. So I'm going to go, look at that. That puts me in quadrant number 2. But notice, that's only 90 so far. They said go 180. So if I'm already in quadrant number 2, well then I need to go another 90 so that it becomes 180. See, I needed 2 90s to do that. So I'm actually going to end up in quadrant number 3. All right, but now let's talk points, right? Look, this point was 3, 4. We said when we go 90, we switch them. So that would be 4, 3. But then I go another 90, so I switch them back. So this one is actually back to 3, 4 again. In fact, look at it here. If I was in quadrant 1, 3, 4, right? 3 and then 4. Look at that, 3 and then 4. But according to this table, it says they have to both be negative because I'm in quadrant number 3 where everything's negative. So negative, negative. So there I have my point. I just need to draw it now. So -3, 1, 2, 3, and down 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. There it is. So that's V prime. So this one does have a little more detail, like I said earlier. Okay. All right, let's try another one here with just a point. So there's G, and G is located right now at -2, +1. All right. And now the question is, well, where's my brand new G prime going to be? All right, so let's see what they told us. We're going to go 90 degrees, counter again. All right, so look at the picture of the clock over here. We're spinning it like this. So if I'm spinning it like this, I'm in quadrant number 2 right now. And if I'm spinning this way, counterclockwise, and remember, I'm only going 90. So I'm going to end up in quadrant number 3 again for this problem. But that's fine. Remember, if I go 90, the rule is every time you go a 90, switch the numbers. So it's a 2 and a 1. Well, now it's a 1 and a 2. And now remember, since I'm in quadrant number 3, look up here, quadrant number 3, both numbers have to be negative because all numbers are negative in quadrant 3. So negative, negative. So it's -1, -2, and there it is, ladies and gentlemen. There is G prime. So it's basically, when you think rotation is, oh, I have to switch numbers and then be careful with my signs. That's kind of like the phrase we tell ourselves. I have to switch the numbers anytime I do 90 and be careful with signs. All right, last one. So to finish out the notes, it says, find the coordinates of the image of the triangle shown below after a 90-degree clockwise rotation, and then graph it. All right, so look, there's a couple steps here. So these are just some steps that you can follow for your assignment. List the coordinates of the pre-image. All right, so let's look at the letters. KLN. So KLN. All right, so we're going to write the points down for these values here, or sorry, for these points. But then I'm going to, remember, this is the original. Then I need the new ones. So K prime, L prime will be needed, and eventually N. All right, so here we go, ladies and gentlemen. So first things first, let's name all the points. So K is 1, -3. So 1, -3. The L is 4 and -2 from the looks of it. 4, -2. And then the N is 2, -1. All right, so we have all of our values. And now let's read it again. Remember what they said. We're going to go 90 degrees clockwise. Looking at my clock up here, right? The clock goes like this. So if I'm going 90 degrees clockwise, right now I'm in quadrant number 4. I'm going 90 degrees clockwise. There it is. There's my 90. And you don't have to write that down. This is just for your notes so that you can visualize it. So look, I'm going to end up in quadrant number 3. Wow, just a lot of quadrant 3 questions for today. All right, but here we go. So look at what happens. Remember, I'm going a 90. If I'm only going to go 190, I have to switch my numbers. Don't worry about negatives. Don't write negatives yet. So look, 1, 3. All right, 3, 1. 4, 2. 2, 4. Notice I'm not saying negatives because I don't need that yet. And then 2, 1. 1, 2. All right, and now remember, what quadrant are we in? We're in quadrant number 3. In quadrant number 3, everything in here, look at this up here. Everything in quadrant number 3, both numbers have to be negative because that's when we started graphing points. That's what we learned. And so everything should be negative. So notice in this problem, we actually do the points first, then we draw it. When we were doing reflection and translation, we would do the drawing first, but not here. So, ladies and gentlemen, to finish it off, here we go. My new point is -3, -1. 1, 2, 3, -1. There is my N. Whoops, sorry, that's my K prime. L is -2, -4, so -2. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's my L prime. And finally, my N is -1, -2. Notice how all the lettering changes when you do a rotation. The letters they're all over the place now, right? Translation, the letters kind of stayed in the same order. Reflection, maybe one letter changed. Here, they're both changing. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, this is the concept of rotation. Remember, in rotation, we are going to spin it around the center of rotation. If we go 90, we're going to switch the letters and be careful with the signs. All right, ladies and gentlemen.